Startup Unscripted. The questions you have with the truths you need to hear.
Help doctors get into practice the way they want to get into practice. Hashtag truth. That's why we put it out there. What we want to do is we want to bring truth to the startup game.
And now your host, Michael Dencio.
You're muted.
All right, guys. Welcome back. This is Mike Dencio with Next Level Consultants and Startup Unscripted. We're back on another episode of Dental Kids Week. So this whole week is about kiddos and talking to pediatric dentists and startups and all kinds of fun stuff. So thanks again for the guest who I'm going to introduce here in a second. But real quick, guys, couple announcements. So Supermouth sponsored this week. I've got some Supermouth gear all up in here. It's kind of a tight squeeze in this basically closet that I'm living in right now. I've got the t-shirt on. I've got the things. And I know my guests can talk a little bit about Supermouth, but they sponsored this this whole week. It's a great program for kiddos and even now adults to get on. They've got all kinds of options, and I think you guys should definitely check them out. We're going to have some details below for you guys to check out. And then also, if you hang a little bit towards the end of this episode, we'll play a commercial. Another little housekeeping thing that I'm letting everybody know that we are consolidating brands. So right now, Startup Unscripted is the brand that you all know and subscribe to. We have another one called Dental Acquisition Unscripted. Both of those brands are going to be consolidated to what we call one channel, one brand, and it's going to be Dental Unscripted. So move your subscription over to Dental Unscripted. Soon we will have all of these episodes for startups, acquisitions, and practice management tips. And that'll be on one channel called Dental Unscripted. So enough with the announcements. Sorry, guys. I had to get all that out. Otherwise, the producers would get mad at me. But without further ado, I have a special couple on today, one of our clients. And they're special to me because they are in the weeds right now. They are literally within weeks from openings. Well, not really, but it probably feels like it, months from their opening day. And they are literally grinding right now as we speak. And it's just a special thing because they were our clients and we had a blast coaching them. So Dr. Mark Van Duker and his wonderful wife, Evelyn Van Duker, welcome to the show, you two.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, so these guys just went through the entire process of doing a startup. And like I said, they are in the weeds. So we're about 3 months, 4 months. What are we in, guys? How many months in now?
2 months?
Yeah, only about 2 months.
Okay, so 2-3 months. I was thinking 3 months, but 2 months in. And so they are literally grinding right now to try to find every patient they can on the street. They're probably shaking hands and kissing babies and doing all the things. But before we even get to any of that stuff, I'd like to ask either one of you, and you guys play off of each other, try to figure out who's going to answer what question. But I want to ask the very first question to actually Doctor, why did you want to get into business force behind you doing a startup? Because startups are challenging, acquisitions are challenging too, but startups are challenging. Why did you want to go into business just in general question? Softball here. Start us off.
Yeah, I think in general, one of the things about dentistry that's unique is you still have the opportunity to build equity, unlike a lot of other healthcare professions right now. So the idea is sort of like owning a house and paying off a mortgage. It's like the harder you work and put into this practice, you can actually get that back on the back end other than like your salary, but you can actually build like a retirement through your office. So I think for me, just building that equity and then also being able to do the dentistry that I want, like kind of the style I like doing it, really helps versus, when you go into other offices, I want to keep, the owner happy, and I've had really great associate jobs. I can't complain. I've had really good bosses, but just being able to kind of take what I learned from each office and then put it into my own kind of the style that I like.
I love that. And one thing we didn't get out of the way here was Doc and Evelyn, what your guys' backgrounds are, because I'm about to ask the same question to Evelyn. And what you all don't know in the audience is Evelyn's an accountant, CPA. That's where she comes from. Her whole world is numbers. So this is an awesome pairing, which is exactly why I wanted to interview you guys. You got doctor, husband, and then you've got wife who's all about the numbers. So this is perfect. Evelyn, is it the same answer? Like as his wife, partner, and spouse, like is it the same answer there? Like why for you as his partner in this crazy situation?
It's very similar answers, and on top of that, we have a 2 and 4-year-old. I just always admire, like, I don't know if it's the right comparison, but I really love when, like, there's a family raised on a farm, right? You put your kids to work, you always work together, you have the same goal, and I just really love that concept. And because he's a pediatric dentist, and
Yeah.
I just feel it's the perfect business opportunity so that we can work together and our kids maybe in the future can work with us as well. So that's why, yeah,
Well,
it's very
I
similar.
love that touch, Evelyn, because you're absolutely right. Like what we don't talk a lot about on the show is kind of like that legacy you're passing on to your little ones. I have little ones, you guys have little ones. I think that's also why we connected. But them seeing you start a business and seeing that hard work that they probably don't really realize it right now, but they will someday. And so I think that is totally cool. Family owned business, kiddos watching you guys do it. So that's definitely something to be admired and appreciated. I totally feel that. Let's take a back step real quick. Doc, where did you go to school? Where did you get your specialty? Like, give me a little bit about your journey, how many years you associated. Just tell me a little bit about the journey that led up to you getting in ownership.
Yeah, so I did dental school in Seattle, so University of Washington. Kind of grew up in Washington State, Gig Harbor area. And then did my residency. I wanted to travel. So obviously Evelyn and I were married at the time, and she and I were both ready for kind of a switch, like switching it up. So when we were applying for residencies, we ended up going to the East Coast. So we went to Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., which was a really fun place. I feel like we both grew a lot, like on a personal level, just totally going to a brand new area, like from family and friends. So did that residency for 2 years.
You
and
came
then,
back together, not separated. So that's
yeah,
it.
no, yeah, it was intense, like just uprooting ourselves. There's a lot of stress there moving across the country with our son, who was like 9 months old at the time. But
oh man,
it was crazy. So we did that, and then we
going to
started
school, broke, baby, together. How many years were you married at that point, or just together?
We've been together like 5. We were together from the beginning of dental school. So like,
okay,
we were together for dental school. So like 4 or 5 years.
okay.
But still, I would say Evelyn's still with me, because being broke and moving us around for that long while she's working and just supporting the family was crazy. So
yeah,
kudos for Evelyn for not jumping ship on that. But so at that point, we felt pretty confident, like, we can do this. Like, we can go to other places. Like, we don't have to just solely stay like where I grew up, or just stay like in Seattle. So we moved back to Washington because that's where family was. And I associated there at a great practice for a year. And then we felt like we were ready to try something new. And Evelyn, you can share what ended up happening.
Mark, that's perfect. So
yeah.
So you graduated from UW dental school. You went over to Washington, not Washington State, but Washington D.C. Did your pedo training there, and then moved back. Correct? And then associated for how many years? I didn't catch that part.
So I associated for 1 year.
1 year.
And then, it's kind of crazy, but we all got COVID. and we're like, let's go travel now that we've all had COVID and we're not afraid of flights, because this was back when COVID was a big deal. So we flew to visit friends in Arizona, and Evelyn's like, I want to live here. Like,
she liked the sun.
Yeah. So we kind of, that's when I took a new associate job in Arizona, and we started getting serious about the startup.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And Evelyn, give me your background and kind of your plug in. I'd love to hear about how you guys met. There's always these stories of husband and wives doing these startups, and going through dental school and the hardship you all went through. I think that's real. I think that's who's literally listening to this show, is folks that are literally in those trenches that you were in 5 years ago. I'm being dead serious. And I'm curious to hear Evelyn's. He's 150%. Like, it's all on your shoulders while you get that you got them through this. And so totally kudos to you. So Evelyn, what's your story on this?
So Mark and I met in college, and side story of that, I grew up hating dentists because I had a horrible experience.
Yeah.
With
Was it
dentists.
all dentists in general, or just Mark at first?
In general. So I never imagined marry one in healthcare or dentistry, but we met in college. And after we got married, he started to get serious in dentistry.
Yeah.
So I was at accounting school at the time. So knowing that there's so many uncertainties ahead, but I like to work. I always imagined that I'll always work. So I just went to a Big Four accounting firm because they have office everywhere. So I can transition to whichever office if I need to. So that's how, when he started at UW, then I worked at Seattle at a big accounting firm. So we moved around. I kept the same job as we moved. And then later on, I just joined another big technology firm, but I work remotely. So that's how, we can get through the whole journey, because you just need someone who can be more stable with.
How would you describe kind of like that grind? Because I think that's a real thing, especially for specialists. Let's just even GPs that maybe go down a GPR program or whatever. But like, how would you guys describe that kind of journey of, while Mark, you're like, I'm gonna double down and go into way more debt, and we're having a baby, and it's all on my wife's back right now, but it's just gonna all work. Like, is it this, like, does someone tell you guys this stuff in school? Like, it's gonna be totally fine and you're gonna have a bunch of money at the end of this? Like, seriously, like, what's the message there? Because a lot of you go through this process. Like, what was the hardest part of that whole thing? And I don't know, any bit on that, of folks that are maybe GP right now thinking specialists, and they're married and they're thinking about family planning? Any words of advice from either of you?
I'm curious what you have to say, Evelyn, but I would just say one thing from my perspective. My dad is an anesthesiologist, so I think as a kid, just hearing him tell me, like, you know what, Mark, if you go through medical school, because at the time I was pre-med, like before I switched to dental, but he was like, it's going to be a long grind. Like, I had friends in their 20s who were buying boats and buying houses, and I was still in school. And it wasn't until my mid to late 30s that, like, I finally started to have an income, but my income was higher than my friends who got out earlier than me. So it's just this expectation that, like, the income will eventually be there, but you're going to be broke for a bit of time first.
Yeah. Evelyn,
finding someone who's willing to do that journey with you is huge. Like, Evelyn's been, by my side. I think it's not always easy, but yeah, I'm curious what you're like, why you were willing to do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's legit. I mean, of course, when you fall in love with someone, you fall in love with them and you just follow them. And it's not like you're falling in love with a bum that's not pursuing a career. So that's a little bit easier. But from your perspective, like, what was the hardest part of that? And any words of wisdom on how to get through that? Because that's what this podcast is all about. We don't talk about any of this stuff. We talk about construction and IT and all the stuff, but this is real stuff right now. So, like, what any words of advice for those couples, dentists, whatever that are getting ready to go through that process?
Yeah, I think that there are basically two things that help me through it. One is having friends who are similar. Because if you talk to, I have a lot of friends who were in the healthcare, like who are older than me, who went through the journey or like in the process, like together. So like from what I've heard, it's tough to start. And so you kind of, because you're talk to them a lot, then you're like, okay, this is normal and
Mhm.
you will get through that. So that's
Yeah.
definitely one thing that helped me because whenever I talk to them, they're all like, yes, like healthcare spouses are, if you put them together, their
Like a
connectivity can just went out of the roof.
yeah, that's
You
like
know, you're not alone. So
yeah,
that's like one
almost
thing
like
that
military wives and husbands,
exactly,
like it's a
exactly.
whole thing. It's a whole thing. Well, Evelyn, you're so numbers driven, sensitive in a good way. We always her and I joked, didn't we, Mark, about how much she loved the numbers, how much I love the numbers, and that was our thing. And then Mark, you had this clinical thing that you wanted to talk to Paula about, and so it was a great dynamic between you two, just in general. And it's great having a partner, not only in life like you two have, but also a partner in the business, because so much of all the steps that you guys just went through was a team effort, back to kind of being broke all the time. Well, Mark was able to continue to work his butt off as an associate while you were building this thing, and Evelyn really picked up a lot of the heavy lifting while he was clinical, right? It's really hard to go home and do the marketing, which we just talked about, and do all the things when you're exhausted clinically and all the other things. I just talked to another pedo client here in Washington, actually, and she's working like 4.5 days. And I'm like, dude, you gotta start carving some time out, because this startup isn't gonna happen if you don't start carving. And she doesn't have anybody like that. She's a single mom. So like, again, kudos for Evelyn to be a part of that. But um you guys are a great team. But Evelyn, from an accounting numbers brain, knowing that, like, any tips there on how to save or manage this money, because I'm imagining that, Mark, you were able to get college loans like no problem. How did you guys make it financially work? I guess you working full time, Evelyn, is a big thing, but like, any financial advice on that front? I mean, I'm in uncharted territory right now. I have no coaching to offer. You guys offer the coaching to these guys that listening.
Yeah, well, first, I think expect that you will be broke for a year or two. And second thing, I think it's an expectation. I think the best advice that we were offered is to start this early because it's really hard. What we figure is it's really hard to change your lifestyle, right? Once you have the money, the lifestyle, and then you have to dial back, it's a huge, huge risk.
Oh,
But
that's
for
true.
us, it's like, oh, like we're just going back to dental school. You're taking a loan and I'm working my job. So
Yeah.
it's nothing different. Like yes, we had 1 year where he had a good income and I had two, and it was really nice. And to dial back did make me anxious for a while. So
Mm,
I would say like save up. Like things helped me is save up for a whole year. Like
mhm,
you have the expenses covered for a whole year. That gives you time so that you
mhm,
don't have to focus on, oh, like we just don't have income or lose half of the income for a whole
mhm,
year. So
mhm.
that helps me.
Well
Like
said. I mean, I'm just gonna say it right now. I get clients that don't have a savings account and they're doing this, and they can get a loan. And that's the thing that I always say is like, just because the lenders are saying they can give you money doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea either, right? Like, I used when I worked for the bank, I used to say, Look, just because I can go and finance a Ferrari doesn't mean that I should go get a Ferrari. That doesn't make sense right now for me. I could definitely qualify for one." So to that point, that advice that you just gave is huge, because you guys are going into a startup. And Mark, you're working part-time still to this day, 3 months in. Evelyn, did you end up quitting your job officially?
I'm
No.
still keeping it.
Okay. I know that was kind of that was thrown around a little bit. We were talking about how you guys are doing that, but I think that's smart. You just kind of keep the income in and fit the startup into your lifestyle until the thing breaks even and starts making you money. But having that nest egg, that egg to rely on just in case is huge, 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 huge. So I also totally can appreciate what you just said, Evelyn, where it's not even the nest egg, because the nest egg's great for sure, but it's also keeping those monthly bills way down. And the lifestyle is easily like when you graduated, Mark, I'm imagining you like, oh, I'm a pediatric dentist. Like instead of doing, oh, let's just double down and do a startup and be broke again, you were probably thinking, well, I want my boat too now, right? So
Yeah,
it did. Yeah. I mean, was that legit in your household, legit a thing where you were like, do we really want to be broke again? Like, let's go get a house. And Evelyn, you had just taken quote unquote him through college, and finally, you guys can start making some money and having fun and going to travel and do all the things. And then you're like, yeah, let's go do a startup and be broke again. Like, like walk me through that conversation. How did that?
A perfect example, when we moved to Arizona, we're looking at houses, right? Because like it just
Yes.
makes sense to buy a house in Arizona.
Perfect.
But Mark was like, "Oh, I want to buy like a big house because now I can't afford it." And we went through like the loan officers. Yes, they're like, "Oh yeah, based on your last year income, you can afford like a million house. It's fine."
Yeah.
But that's maxing out every single dime we have, and we know we have this startup coming up. So
Yeah.
we had a hardcore conversation at home
I love it.
to like buy a small home, a
I love
small
it.
yard. So that, but now, Mark, you can talk from your perspective. Like now you're happy with like our monthly payments, right?
Love that. Yeah, Mark. What I mean, trust me that there someone that is well educated, has paid their dues, all the things you want to finally start producing and giving a lifestyle to your family, like all those desires. I have an MBA, but I didn't go through that. That's raw right there. Like I was able to work and get my MBA at the same time. I never had to deal with what you guys are dealing with. So, Mark, I mean, did that pay a toll on, like, I don't know, your dad and your being a husband and all that? Like, was that a thing?
No, there's definitely like a sense of pride, like you want to be, providing and proud of that. And so, yeah, there's definitely that. But I wasn't bothered too much by it, just because I talk to these owners who are 10 years in, 15 years in, and I just see what they do it right. And I really want that. But yeah, there is a struggle at first, like, I have that pride in me and like that arrogance where I want a nice home and I want to be like,
Hell yeah.
A little bit show that off.
Yeah.
Now when I look at, like, I'm happy in our home and our monthly payments for our car payments, our house payments are low enough where like we don't feel as much like anxiety or stress.
Yeah.
That, and we, like, we'll get a nicer home when we can. But
I love it. I think that's so wise. Like I started thinking about this, just me even, and I'm older than you guys, but like I was thinking about this yesterday and I was like, all the little decisions that I made from 20 something to today, which is give or take plus 20 years. Like they all compounded, and the hard decisions in the beginning, like you're talking about right now, compounded for me big time in my 40s, right? But absolutely did I want to have the best golf clubs and buy the boats, and what I'm really fascinating is even now, like, not to get crazy with time stamping this, but even now, like, I'm seeing our younger people, like, even if there was some discipline, with the folks 10 years or whatever behind me, like 30 years younger than me today, like there is zero concept of investing in your future self. There's zero. It's all about experience, and I don't need to make any money and benefits. And what you guys are doing is you're investing in yourselves for your 40, 40 and 50 future self. And it's going to be a lot bigger, right? Because you did double down. But it's so easy to stop doubling down and just love life, right? It'd be so easy to do that. But anyways, I just love this conversation. So let's pivot into the project real quick. And I know we're getting a little long-winded, and I didn't think we were going to go down that path, but I just realized as I was interviewing you guys, that's like gold, what we just went through there. Like, I have yet to have doing this podcast for 4 or 5 years. I've yet to have that conversation. And I think I'm on the call with people all day long with guys just like you, and they're talking about this stuff to me before they make the decision. And so like, this might be one of my most favorite episodes right now, because this is real stuff. This is really real stuff. All right. So we've got tons of episodes about the project and how to manage all that. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but kind of similar, Mark, I had to fight you just a little bit on how big we scaled the practice to the same conversation about let's get a smaller house.
Yeah.
It's the exact same conversation. So are you glad we didn't go crazy now that you're in three months in or 2 months into your project? Are we glad we did that?
Yeah. Like, this isn't like I'm not just saying this just to say it, but like, you saved me a lot of money by scaling back the lease, because there was a space available that was huge, and I wanted this massive office, and I wanted ADEC everything. Like, I just wanted this to be like my pride and like something that was so nice and like state of the art. But then like, we found another location that was a smaller square footage in a better demographic area. And we did a combination of like, a little bit of ADEC with some other brands as well in there, and didn't build out all the chairs, and like, now when I look at the payment and like what I would have spent, and like, the startup growth, when you think about it, the first 6 months is just new patients that you're marketing to. So that first 6 months, like, it's literally like pretty slow. And so how do you even survive? Like, if you do this massive build and you're like, okay, now I'm set, like I never have to move again and everything's done. But then it's like, you're going to pay those bills when you're brand new. So I feel like really like again, it was the pride thing. I wanted the huge office, but I'm so happy that you and Evelyn like kind of double team me. We're just like, do not do that.
It was a double team, Evelyn. It was a double team. I couldn't have did that without you. That's right.
Do not do this. And then she like was like, all right, I need to get Mike involved. And then Mike, you're like, not do this. I'm like, okay, I guess Mike said it, so I won't do it.
Yeah. Was I the tiebreaker? Was I always the tiebreaker?
If it's only me, he wouldn't trust me. But if you say it,
Evan, has nothing to do with you. It's a husband wife thing. Yeah. No, like, I think that's a really appropriate conversation, because there's a lot of podcasts out there right now, and I won't name any podcasts or names or call anybody out, but there is a lot of discussion about go big or go home. And it's dangerous. And as you know now, where you're at, it's dangerous. Now, you could come back to me in a year from now and say, damn you, Mike, we should have did bigger. But you can't forget the moment that you're in right now, because is it first world problems or third world problems to have too many patients and too busy, right?
100%. That's what it came down to, is like, everyone who's established will say go bigger when you're starting out, but it's like, how am I going to pay the bills? Like, the demographics worse in that area. I see even with better demographics here, it's a grind to bring patients in. So yeah, like, it's nice to have the huge space, but for those first like 2 years, how are you going to pay that really high rent? And like, the invoices on I know you've had other podcasts on this, so we don't have to go too far into this, but like the invoices on like contractors and equipment, like they just like, you
keep
think
coming. They just keep coming.
Yeah. So
like, when's it going to stop? Right. When's it going to stop? It's so true. And again, having that cash that you guys saved is going to help. managing through those TI allowances, which we talked about offline, and just all of it, but just keeping everything low. And yes, someday I hope you call me and say, Mike, damn you, we should have did bigger. I hope that's the case, because at that point, then you can do the second office and then you can go big on that, but you at least have cash flow. You have a base to feed off of and to live off of. And yeah, no, really good advice. I'm glad they're hearing it from you, not me. I try to say it a lot. Evelyn, as a partner spouse that was very involved with the project, and I'm going to use the word, sorry, Mark, dealing with a clinical dentist trying to do this, what were some of those conservative topics, like scaling too big, that you really had to like duke it out, and you're glad that you kind of won those battles? And then maybe the vice versa, did he challenge you on some stuff that you're glad that he won? Like, was there, I think that's a really good conversation, because clinicians and dentists, it's their time, their due, their dream practice, and they don't have an Evelyn, quote unquote, to level it out. And so I think this is kind of cool. So anything to add to that, all of that, Evelyn?
I think it's really good experience for us to like learn, because there are a lot of times, definitely he's absolutely right. Like, one of the example I can tell you was hiring time. I had a good read on one of the applicant, but Mark did not. And he chose to not say anything to keep me happy, because I was pretty like into, but it's because it's a dental assistant, but I'm not like, I don't have the clinical background to know what works, what doesn't.
Right.
Like, to me, it's just based on like whatever I assumed it is to be. So like, we actually had to let her go like 2 weeks in, because it's just not a good fit. So like, from then, like, we talked together. If you don't have a good read, tell me. Like, we need to talk through it.
Love it.
Not just like I'm making the decision. Because before, it's like, oh, it's like operations is on me, right? Hiring is
Yep.
kind of part of HR.
Yep.
But there are like, I would say like, it's definitely a learning process where we should be talking and communicating, no matter like what like the main rule is for each.
Totally. 150%. It's a good balance to have someone like that. You guys are lucky to have each other. Keep saying that. There's also some negative to it too. Let's talk about that. Having spouses work for you, it can drain the team, it can drain your marriage, right? And so, how you guys finding that balance? This episode's so good. I should be wrapping it up, and you guys probably got to go. I promise I'll wrap it up. But any advice on how to make that work? Partners, business and personal, making a business work and all that, the dynamics. Any comments there?
I'll go. Like, I don't know what you have to say about Evelyn. I'll just go first here, but I think that Evelyn and I's like background and skill sets are different, and we're both very opinionated people about what we're good at. And so it's nice that they're in different things. It might be challenging. Trust me, there's like, I would say the majority of couples that do startups together, I would say, or I can't speak for the majority, Mike, you could, but like the ones from my class, I do see some of them are like two dentists. So I'm sure it works. I'm just saying from our perspective, our arguments are a little bit less because we're kind of like specializing in different things within the business. Yes, we still have to communicate, but I think like if we were both arguing on like clinical stuff, that might be a little more challenging. But because Evelyn's coming at it more like HR marketing and the numbers, and I'm coming at it more from like the clinical side, that has sort of shielded some of the I guess arguments that could be in there. But that's kind of my opinion. It's just we're opinion about different.
I love that. I'm gonna touch on that. Do you guys have any rules about not bringing stuff home, or is it all on? Let's talk. Like, have you given yourself any breaks at home? You got a little one too. Like, it can't all be about the dental office.
Yeah, we kind of have one kind of rule. We're not always following it, but I'm like, I need sleep. But when somebody throw me a question, my head spins. So the rule I give Mark is don't start to talk about important things after 10 p.m. because then I can't
Mm,
sleep. Yeah, and
mm,
like it will start to be a heated conversation because I want to go to bed. And
mhm.
yeah, he wants to talk. So
Yeah.
that's one rule.
Yeah, that's a great role. That's a great role. I wanted to touch on real quick roles and responsibilities in partnership, because what you guys are doing right now is an undefined but very defined job description for the two partners or the two people helping operate this business, right? And it's really easy to say, okay, well, Evelyn's got all this stuff on this brain, and Mark, you've got all this stuff on this brain. If you didn't have Evelyn, you would still need to do the same thing within your business, and you're figuring that out with your team members as well. But like, even with Paula and I as a partner group, I know what my job is and what her job is. And even though I could probably do a lot of what Paula does, and she could do a lot of what I do, we know that the decision maker is, and then we of course have to decide together, but there's a champion for certain things, and that's dividing and conquering and having very defined rules. So this is a beautiful thing here, because now Mark can spend all his time focusing and owning his piece, and Evelyn, same thing. And there's a lot of trust here. And it's easy to do this when you have two different strengths, right? But you're right. When two people have the same strengths, I challenge you, like two dentists, I get a lot of pedo ortho kind of combos, or what, like you said, husband, wife, maybe both pedos. Like, you probably have the same quote unquote brain, but you still need to have the roles and responsibilities and job duties. So you guys have it naturally set up. And I applaud you on that. That seems like it's working really well. All right, as we kind of lay into this last 5 minutes here and wrap things up, give me one thing that surprised you about the project. And there's Stefani piping in. I love it. You guys know Stefani. She helps and helped you guys through the
She's
process.
great.
This is live, by the way, so she's piping in. I love it. So if there's one thing that you would say that you were surprised about, and then one thing that you would have done differently, I'll give Evelyn the one to do differently. What could you have done differently, Mark? One thing that surprised you in a good way, putting you on the spot. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Evelyn,
Evelyn, what's one thing that you would have done differently? I think we discussed it before we even started. What was that?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is to start your like community marketing. What I mean by that is, as a pedo office, especially, your referral comes from pediatrician, from GPs, and as especially because we're new to the area, we were like we don't have people already, right, will come to our door. It's purely on like how to maximize the branding awareness. So one thing I would have done differently is to start that early before we open our doors. Before we open, we were just solely focused on getting the clinic set up, getting websites set up, like everything logically, or yeah, just those things. But once we open the door, it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
When's the patient's going to come in? So I know there are other marketings we can do, but like for the part that you talk to the pediatricians in the area, you talk to the schools, daycares in the area, that part can start early. Like people, you can start to know people, and they can start, okay, there's a like new pedo in the area. So I would definitely 100% do that, so that you don't struggle like the very, very beginning. Like, because for our second,
struggle's an aggressive word, but I know what you mean, that you're never going to be as busy as you want to be day one, right? Ever.
right.
But to flip that, you're right. Like, to be busier, you have to put in more work. And I love that tip, because, and you guys probably remember me saying this, and I feel like I say it almost daily. And it's like, okay, guys, we're through the project. And there's a lot more things to do: hire and set up systems and credential and pick your fee schedules and start up the membership plan and make sure the contractor's showing up and all the things. But the one thing that's the most important above all that is trying to find some patience in between the time now to open. And imagine you don't even have an Evelyn, it's just Mark clinical, like the single mom that hired me. I mean, she's where I'm struggling to get her to find two things because she's so busy, right? It's just because she's busy. And Evelyn, you're 150% right. Even if all the systems weren't ready to go, your HR manual wasn't dialed, your billing wasn't set up, all the things that you got to get done. Okay. If none of that was ready, but you had a 50 patients day one, what would be better? It would definitely be stressful day one because you have no systems, but at least you have some patients to pay the bills, right? And so there's always that balance, especially with dentists, because they're so checklists, they're so type A, drive systems. And that's what they're really excited about, because they're leaving the associate position because they hate all the systems that they're dealing with and they want to create their own. And this is their baby, but everybody forgets about the marketing. Awesome tip. Mark, anything that surprised you about the process, or maybe even just add to it, and then we'll shut this baby down.
I mean, Evelyn, you really that was a big one, just community marketing. So getting like our name out, brand awareness. I'd say what's surprising me in a positive way, I would say two things that I can think of just off the top of my head here. One is the brand awareness. So like, at first it's like hard to bring people. And then as more you're these different marketings, and then people come in and they're like, well, you gave a goodie bag to my son at school that he came home with, and then I drove past your sign, and then I saw you on Instagram, and so I decided to call. It's like you realize how many touch points are involved, but as you start to build that awareness, like you see, like, okay, last week, only a couple of people called, and then this week, every day of the week, like 2 people called, so like you see that growth, which is really nice. And then the team, so like just finding a good team. I'm really happy with who we have, and so it's really cool, like being in that kind of more like in a, I guess, like a boss role for the first time, but just having like a loyal, hardworking team that is invested in this.
Yeah.
I couldn't have asked for a better team, and I was surprised at how well that came together.
I love that. That's awesome. I have to throw this in because Abby, my one of the next level gals that work for us, chimed in with a question, and I just have to, because it's a great question. Going to put it up on. It was brought in from YouTube, and that's her question. I think it's a great question for you, Mark, or even Evelyn, whoever wants to take this. The question came in again. These are live. What kind of feedback have you received from your first patients, and how has that influenced your approach to your now new patient care that you're creating within your practice? Great question. And then we'll close it down with that one. Mark, Evelyn, anybody? Yeah.
Evelyn, I think you take a lot of pride in this because you approach our clinic from a mom's perspective, not from a dentist perspective. So you could answer that.
Oh, it's
Put
a lot of
spot.
I can answer it, but I know Evelyn is proud of these, like the patient experience. That's like a big thing she harps on.
I'll say one that's positive and one is negative in some way. We just went through this for one of the mom that she has a special need daughter, and she moved to Arizona just because of her daughter can have more resources. So she loved her experience here. She loved how caring we are. And she just we're trying to refer her to somewhere else to get her daughter into hospital earlier. And she's like, can we come back? Can we come back to you after we do that?
Yeah.
And it just shows, it's very, very rewarding, showing that, okay, this is, because my perspective is treat the patient as how I want to be treated, because I'm a mom. So it's really helpful to know that, okay, this is what they want too, not just like, oh, this is some Evelyn nitpicky thing. So that's why I love it. It's like, Mark is like, oh, you're spending a lot of time. Like, it's not the time, it's care. So
I love it.
Yeah, the second piece is kind of negative. Like we had our first GA day, right? Like we were under the assumption of like, oh, parents are allowed to be back like at the beginning before kids put sleep, until the night before we were told that. And we start to call patients and they're very, very mad about it. So like we had to go through a lot to get the first day like eased out. So I think for us, the biggest lesson is like, for us, we need to clarify on every single detail before
Love
we
it.
communicate
Love
back.
it. Great. Guys, nailed that. There's going to just be so much growth and stretching for you guys for the next 12 to 24 months. So I just want to salute you both and say, gosh, I mean, how much of a pleasure it was to coach you. I know the Next Level team agrees. Look, they're both, my team's commenting. I love it. We loved working with you guys. I couldn't be more proud. You guys are going to be successful. You got to keep grinding. And we talked about this before the show began, and it's just every 6 months compounds, because the patients you see today, in 6 months, you're going to see those same people and plus all the new patients. And then in 9 months from now, so on and so forth. So just keep staying the course. I love it. Without further ado, I'm going to close this down. Any last final things that you had to get off the chest before I run the super mouth commercial?
I just got to say, it was really, obviously we still stay in touch and everything, but no, it's just really great working with you and your team. You, Paul, Stefani, like just worked really closely with us, and being in a new area, especially, it was huge. So just really grateful to be a part of your team.
That's sweet. Thanks, Doc. Supermouth's paying for this. I didn't pay Mark for that. I promise. Yeah, no, the pleasure was all ours. You guys were, I mean, you are the reason why we do this, because of you guys. You're great. And well, it'll be awesome seeing you guys continue to thrive. So without further ado, let's shut this down at 46 minutes. Sorry, it was so long. We had a great conversation. You guys did great. And I'll see you guys next time in Arizona. Sounds like a plan?
Sounds great.
Okay, see you guys.
See you.
Bye.
Supermouth is whole mouth health. It supports the mouth's natural microbiome and promotes healthy teeth, meaning that it can slow down and fight decay, reducing the need for drilling.
I'll take it.
Fill out everyday questions about each family member and be connected with your own super dentist to customize a routine specialized for any stage of development.
I wish I'd known about Supermouth.
A revolutionary approach to mouth care for healthier, happier, more successful kids.